Hello and welcome back to Let's Chat About Your Chart, Episode 1, Part 2 with Brian Dennis. Today we are going to start off with talking about the fixed energies in the zodiac. So Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, and Taurus. Thank you so much for joining me and let's dive in. See you in a sec.
I think one thing that I get frustrated at with myself is when I expect a lot out of, like, I know I can do something and I'm not doing it the way I should be doing it, maybe. Like currently with dance, I almost treat that as like another sport. Yeah, because it is
dance
almost
is a sport.
Yeah.
Continue.
And so with that, going to school and being a part of this ensemble of people and seeing them be able to transition into these, certain moves or whatever very quickly because they've been doing it forever. Where me, I'm kind of relying on my athleticism and just being able to kind of power through certain things and not having the technique and the repetition of doing a certain move over and over since I was, young. Where I see that in other people and I'm like, I want to fucking do that so bad. And
you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I know I can do it. And then I'm just like, well, now I'm going to go in my basement and do this over and over until I get better at it.
The trick for Leo moons is to build confidence in yourself and not compare yourself to others. Also, Scorpio suns do that too. There's a little bit of a pang of jealousy with Scorpio energy, is that they also compare themselves to others. It's interesting. So there's 4 fixed signs, and 3 out of the 4, they are very much so comparing themselves. So Leo wants to be the center of attention and is comparing themselves to everybody else in that respect. Aquarius is the black sheep, which is the sister sign of Leo, and it is comparing itself to others because of its lack, if that makes sense. So the Leo is like, well, what do I have? I want this, and I have this, and the other people don't, so I'm great. And the Aquarius is like, I don't have this. Everybody else is different than me. And it's like, it's still that jealousy, slightness, of like, well, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that, or even the adverse of, well, I don't have this because I'm better. And it's like, okay, cool. And then the Scorpio Scorpio just has jealous tendencies. It just does. It just has possessive, jealous tendencies and it gets hurt easily. Scorpio feelings is very sensitive, and so it can get hurt easily and is just protective of itself in that sense, and can get jealous if they feel like something is being taken away from them or they don't have something that somebody else has. But Taurus energy is fucking fine. Taurus energy is like, I'm the most important thing. Am I cool? Am I good? Am I safe? Am I comfortable? Am I fed? All right, well, I'm going to get to the things that I want little by little by little by little. It may take a long time because we move slow, but I'm going to get there, so I don't need to compare myself to everybody else. Which also brings us to the North Node, which is where we're all trying to go right now, is being comfortable in our own right. And taking up space and knowing that where we're at is where we're meant to be.
All right, now we're going to move on to discussing Brian's Leo moon and it being in the 4th house of Cancer. Now, Cancer is the sign of emotions and sentimentality. It is very much so attached to the past, to things it has always known. And with Leo being his moon sign, a fixed fire sign, it leads him to be even more attached to that. Because Brian's moon is so attached to what is always known and what has always been for him, any change in that would lead to his pride being affected. If those friendships were approached differently or face evolution, fundamental changes, it might be difficult for Brian to accept and move on from. But as we speak, Brian is 31 years old and has had plenty of time to evolve. And this is one of the things that is a part of Brian's evolution. So let's talk about it.
After that happened, there was still more like Alex eventually, he moved down to Charleston, South Carolina. He went to school at the University of Charleston. Okay. My one buddy, Oliver, he would travel a lot when he was in school. He would do like a lot of internships. Like eventually he went to Antarctica at one point for a long period of time. Exactly. He was off the grid. So
everywhere.
Yeah. And so like these are people that I love and expected to be able to see more as we got older and whatnot. And it just doesn't happen.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh,
your friends left you behind.
Well, that I guess part of the resolve is I've gotten very used to that and expect that a lot of the time. And now, so it's one of those things where I also cherish being with them a little bit more.
Okay.
Because I do not see them as much. Yes. And, I get excited when it's like, okay, when are we going to be able to get together? And when am I going to be able to see you? Are you coming up here? Are we going down there? Whatever it may be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, especially because I just never traveled a whole lot as a kid, I think, which is... Like, for me, the first time I was ever on an airplane was going to Charleston, South Carolina, because, like, otherwise we'd drive. Like, we had family in North Carolina, and we would always just drive down there.
Yeah.
So, like, having those little experiences going along with it are always a nice kind of, like, memento to take away from them. Oh, my first flight was to go visit my buddy Alex with my friends down in South Carolina. Yeah. There were still rough patches here and there. Like, I remember for some irrational reason, I remember me and my buddy Oliver got into like a little bit of a spat for something, but we were both at Rutgers at the same time, and at this time he just met his current girlfriend Trish. They've been dating for so long now.
Okay.
And I can't remember why, but I was either jealous over this new relationship or what. But I remember like we saw each other in the commuter parking lot on Cook Douglas. And he was like, very specific.
I know, and I know exactly which parking lot you're talking about.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember like just giving him like a big like sorry hug, and then like kind of like apologize for whatever we were specifically being immature about, because I guess it must have just been like seeing this person all the time and not seeing him as much. And Trish is great, love Trish, but it was just me. Dealing with those residual sort of like feelings of kind of like knowing that there's a change happening and probably being resistant to it.
Feeling like you were losing another friend.
Yeah, just more shifts and change in relationships, and what I thought or what I expected is now going to have to change.
Do you have high expectations for the situations that you go into?
I feel like they're lower now. When I was younger, I definitely had higher expectations of people and what I was going to maybe receive from them versus what I would put into it. Because usually I know that if I'm going to see somebody or hang out with somebody, I'm usually giving them my full attention or making sure that they're the focus of where I'm going to be.
Okay.
Because if not, I feel like I just wouldn't hang out with the person or like, attend whatever event with this person.
Right.
Because it's just not where I want to be. So with friendships, especially, if like, I remember there was a time where...
It's a Leo moon thing, by the way.
Maybe.
A Leo moon. So a Leo moon will get upset if they're not getting the attention they do feel that they deserve. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't mean that you don't deserve it.
Right.
But that's the thing that really hurts. A Leo moon is not feeling special, not feeling like they're getting the attention that they deserve, feeling unseen, things like that.
Yeah. There was a time where there was a friend who came back. He lived on the West Coast and then came back. And we didn't have the best relationship when he was on the East Coast when we were younger, but we had the same friend group. And so when he came back, he was looking to hang out and do stuff. And at that point, I was like, okay, I haven't seen this person in a while, maybe things are a little bit different. And then so we never really used to hang out like one-on-one.
Okay.
And one night he asked me to go to a bar, a local bar down by us, and hang out one-on-one. I was like, all right, sure, why not? Let's see what happens. And I remember going to the bar, maybe talking with him for like a little while, but then just goes and like wanders off and is like talking to random people or other people at the bar. And like that's like a situation where I was just like, okay, this is not it. Like I was here fully to expect like, sitting down with this person, conversation. Like, obviously, you're at a bar, some other people may
Yeah.
come up and things may happen. And
But
whatnot.
like, you don't expect the person
To
that
be
you
just
met
like,
up
do,
to
do, 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 do.
to leave you.
Yeah.
I agree. When you go out someplace, especially when you're going out and drinking, you do not leave the person that you go with.
You know, if people are having a good time with each other, it just happens by chance, sure. But I was also like, this person just got up and left. Like, once that happened, I was like, okay, this night
Big
is
move.
this night. I was just like, I know this is not what it needs to be, or what I thought it might have been. If there was a
Okay.
change there, yeah.
Okay. You said that if you didn't get the same amount of energy that you were expecting to get from a person, that you reacted strongly. Do you know what has shifted that reaction?
I think becoming more comfortable with myself and understanding that there might be a lot more alone time versus time with people that I expect to see more. If that makes sense. Like, if there's, family or friends and you're trying to make plans and, for whatever reason it doesn't line up and you can't get together, then, you're kind of stuck with yourself and, you have to figure out if there's something else you're going to do, or if you're just going to, sit at home and be like, oh man, I wish, these plans came together and we were able to do something. And I think kind of being comfortable with the fact of, if they don't, then all right, I'm going to go find something else to do, was something that I eventually grew into. I can kind of just be like, all right, I'm going to go find something else. Or I might entirely just make plans for myself to go do something.
I hear Taurus Scorpio in my head over and over again. Taurus Scorpio, Taurus Scorpio. So it's like learning that I can be comfortable and do things that I love all by myself, and I don't need other people to have fun or to be enthralled or excited or,
Mm-hmm.
It's that Taurus energy, that vibe of, where do I feel safe? Where do I feel right? Where do I not need anybody for anything? You don't want to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like peace. It's true peace. I don't need anybody else to give me that. I can find that. I can find happiness on my own. I can find peace on my own. And I can do everything that I need for myself. All I need is me.
Yeah. Not in a way of like, I am totally independent. I want to be independent, because loneliness is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Everyone feels it from varying degrees from time to time.
Yeah.
But I feel like also, like, a lot of my, even like romantic relationships, I kind of,
We're going to get there next.
yeah.
Or we can segue. Look
Sure-
at that segue.
sure, we can segue.
Guy. Look at you.
I would say, if anything, like, now in my romantic relationships, I value the being away from one another, where it's nice to be able to see that person and have something to talk about, or, not have everything every day explained to somebody else, where it's like, if they want all that information every day, like, how was your day? How is this? Which is great, because I love being asked and, like, being able to tell somebody. But if I'll start from the beginning, when I was younger, I feel like, you're kind of having an infatuation with somebody. And for me specifically, after a while of seeing them, it would fizzle out and it would be gone. And then that's where it's kind of like, it wouldn't last so long. And so I didn't know why as a kid, because you're just kind of like, all right, you found this person that's interesting to you. Now you don't want anything. You don't want to, like, see them as much, or, like, you don't want to talk to them as much. And it sounds bad, but I don't mean it in a way of like, I'm totally done with this person.
No,
It's
like the excitement is not exactly there when it's like constantly. So Mars being in your 7th house, the other side of things being extremely passionate, extremely fiery, means that they do fizzle out very, not quickly, but just easily. It doesn't take much for it to fizzle out.
Yeah.
So finding the slow burn is like that sweet spot.
My last relationship, I was in a polyamorous relationship.
Ooh.
Yeah. In terms of the amount of time to be spent with somebody, because they lived in Brooklyn, I lived here in New Jersey, and their other partner lived in Virginia at the time. And so they would travel in between, like, some weekends they'd go down to Virginia, or they would come up to New York to see them.
That sounds like a lot of fucking work.
For them, I can imagine it was specifically.
Holy
but
shit.
For me, it was great because we would see each other, because they live in New York, so I'd see them maybe like after work or something like that, or I'd spend a weekend up there, or they would come to New Jersey for a weekend. But there would be times in between where we don't see each other. And at first I was like, I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And it was something for me that worked out really well because it didn't have that sort of, like you said, like, I want to see this person all the time. It kind of kept it in balance where it's like, all right, I got to see them. Really great. It would be great to see them again soon. But then they would go away, do their other things for a little while. Like, we'd still talk to each other when we text and keep in contact.
Right.
But as far as physically seeing each other, you know, there'd be time in between, which felt great. And I feel like giving each other that space worked for me. Mm-hmm. For them, I don't know if they wanted more of that or not, but, you know, we always worked it out.
They're traveling state to state, so I'm sure.
Maybe.
I'm sure they were like, well, I'm making it work.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, that sort of structure for me going forward is something I would like in another relationship, kind of. It's strange because it's also, you know, without getting too much into the societal part of it, like, you know, a lot of it's just like monogamy and, you know, you should be together all the time and doing things together all the time, which is like, for me, I'm just kind of like, that's not for me. I don't feel like I need to do that. I don't feel like that's a way I need to. For me, I don't think it works. It's not going to work out for me. And also that it's just not something that I enjoy. That I'm going to be with this person 24/7. We're going to do everything together.
Well, 24/7 is fucking crazy.
I know, but people are like that, where some people expect you to be there all the time. And I understand being there for all the important things, for emergencies that happen and, you know, stuff that pops up or just specific dates that are important to a person. Fantastic. I get that. But in terms of just like the day to day, I feel like you can still show somebody appreciation and love without having it have to be, you know, wake up every minute of the day or like, every so often.
Sorry, I was just thinking about COVID times.
Oh no, yeah. Where it's just, you know, that I
ruined
just
a lot of relationships.
So it's just, yeah, it's just something for me that I've noticed that I enjoy and can enjoy people more so that way when I have that space.
That's interesting. So I guess I want to know what the difference is for you between those friendships that you held on so tightly to and your relationships that you're saying are fizzling a little bit or were easy to fizzle.
It's a good question because I kind of think about that too, because it's almost like I don't think I have a distinction for it, but I think there are like these different distinctions of love where like I don't see the friends I make in a romantic way maybe, and I probably have different expectations for a romantic love versus like a family or friendship sort of love.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's also something I'm kind of trying to figure out too, because like I said, I genuinely love my close friends.
Yeah.
Where I get upset if I know that time is going to change for the amount of time I'm going to see them or how often I'm going to be able to see them versus a romantic partner, which would be a new close relationship that maybe it's a societal thing where they expect you to do certain things with that certain person all the time that I just don't have as much interest in.
Okay.
Maybe. But it's definitely something I'm still trying to kind of figure out a little bit because it's not also something that I'm striving for, where like some people kind of like strive to get married and look for this person that they can spend a lot of time with and maybe raise a family or whatever it may be.
Right.
I don't necessarily have that drive. I very much like being able to enjoy a person and show them love and appreciation just for being them and being in the space with them and not have to have some sort of end goal of like, well, you know what? It's been 5 years.
What I'm hearing is that you go into your friendships with more longevity expectations than you do your romantic relationships.
I would say so.
Why is that?
I don't know. I can't, like, that's also something I've just been trying to figure out because I don't know if I think that romantic relationships are meant to last longer than friendships, you know?
What about romantic relationships that are with friends? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can
that's
have one
happened.
in the same.
Yeah, that's happened before too. I've had where like I started off friends with somebody and then it grew into something a little bit more romantic. I don't know. I guess once it gets to a point of being romantic with somebody, something shifts that maybe I expect a little bit more trust from them in terms of being like sort of like independent, where like Like, I know, like I said before, like, I know if I go out somewhere, I can enjoy myself and do whatever I set myself out to do that evening,
Right.
however it turns out. But I also feel like sometimes when you're in a relationship and somebody's expecting you to, be somewhere, be on a whim, be able to, if they call you in an emergency, you're going to go there. That sometimes that hampers it a little bit for me, where I don't enjoy it that much because I feel like I'm going to get pulled away from something that I'm doing that I enjoy a lot. Yeah, it sounds kind of, it's right. It sounds kind of bad. I don't know. It's just, it's so weird. That's the thing. I don't know exactly why.
You think, because you said that you want your partners to have more trust in you.
I guess so.
Do you think that you attract jealous partners? Because that's a Scorpio thing in your 7th house, which is the people, like other people coming to you with that.
I would say so. Because there's been times that I would see somebody and then, maybe if it's somebody else that I'm talking to, they're like, oh, why are you talking to this person? There's some small bit of like jealousy that I pick up on.
That's kind of weird.
I would just be like,
that's a red flag.
Right. I just kind of be like, I am talking to a person. I am here with you, right? But other people in this giant globe exist. I'm going to talk to people. It's not always some underlying thing that I'm talking to them for a reason,
Interesting.
It could just be that it's, they're saying hello, some social interaction happened, a joke popped up, we smiled, we laughed together, they go off, and then that's it.
Right.
Versus like, you were talking to this person. Why were you laughing about? What were you saying?
That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that is, it's Scorpio energy.
Yeah. And
that's so funny that you're like, I don't fucking like that, because you have so much Scorpio energy. You have so much Scorpio energy, but that's literally like, I just got flashbacks to, once again, I told you about my old boss who literally thought she had access to my thoughts, or she should have. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't say what I was thinking, then I'm lying to her. And I'm like, that's not it. Mm-mm. That's not it.
Exactly.
I have sovereignty. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
I've been saying this is that the power dynamics in your relationship. So what I'm hearing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that in your friendships, you are the one who kind of holds on for dear life, but in your relationships, it feels like the other person is holding on to you for dear life.
I would say that's true. Yeah, because I would even say, like, in a lot of my friendships, going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, I also just end up, what do you want to do today? Like, let's, I'm happy to do what you want to do. If it makes you happy, it's going to make me happy. That's going to be great.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Versus where, I guess even in a romantic relationship, if my partner at the time was like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing with my friends, I'd be like, all right, cool, great. That's your time. But
the other way around, it wouldn't be the same.
I don't know. Like, for me, I would also expect to be able to be like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing with my friends. And if there was some sort of like hiccup about it and any sort of like,
Has that happened to you a lot? Or are you just afraid of it happening?
I would probably say more afraid of it happening, because like there aren't too many times where I have to fight for doing what I want to do, because I'm just going to go do it.
Right.
And more or less, it's not so much like I'd make a big stink about it. It would just be like,
I'm doing
this is happening this day at this time. I'm going to be there,
Right.
I think there are parts of me that are like, am I going to put enough trust in this person to be like, hey, go do this thing, you're good? Or are they going to be, give me shit about it versus for whatever reason?
I want to know who was the first person to do that to you, because you said that you're mostly afraid of it happening, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it seems to be a catalyst for you to just like to push back on the, you know what I mean?
Yes, I'm trying to think if there is a very specific situation, because a lot of the times too, a lot of my relationships did not last long enough that some things like that do happen. I think it's just a part of me that I don't want a barrier to be like, to hop over, be like, I have to go through this person to do this thing that I know I'm going to do anyway. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. But what's not getting me is why you think romantic partners are automatically going to do that.
I feel like
that person's the barrier between what you want to do.
It might not even be necessarily a specific thing that I know I'm going to do. I'm going to go do this thing. But that sort of sovereignty that you talked about, where like you're your own person, I give that to my partner completely. Like that is what they should know if they get into something with me. It's like, you go do what you're going to do. I'll be here when you get back. You tell me about it. If you want me to join you on this thing, you let me know. More than likely, I'll join you on it. Okay. Absolutely. For me, I think probably much more of a fear than anything, that most people have a different expectation of what a relationship is than I do. I know if I'm not going to get that same reciprocated energy of like, you go do what you're going to do, I can go do what I'm going to do, and then we come back and enjoy our time together when we plan to do this time, then I might as well not even start it. Because...
Wait, repeat.
So say like in the beginning of a relationship, you're kind of like figuring out who this person is to you, and you know, you're learning about them. And as time goes on, like, you know, maybe like a month or two into it, this person needs a little bit more trust or assurance from you, or from myself, that I could maybe give them. But then if it becomes too much for myself, that it feels like I don't have...
Then you just...
Exactly. And then it's just, it would be one of those things where I totally give you whatever space you need to do what you want. I want you to do those things. You enjoy them. That's what makes you you. I don't expect you to give them up because I'm here. I would expect the same thing for myself. But if I start to see that a little bit come out, where it's like, you need to stop doing this thing for this reason.
Telling you these things, Brian.
It's just, it's not even, it's just, you can kind of tell of like how a person wants
to fight them. What's going on?
It's like you can see in people when they're, depending on like how much time they want to spend with you, how they speak to you about doing certain things together. For me, at least, that's what I pick up on a lot. Okay. And maybe it is just a, you know, an unrealistic expectation of myself that I expect people to be like cool with me being able to just go off and do whatever the fuck I want.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's an unreal expectation for yourself.
Right, but I also think, you know, I'm also might have an unrealistic expectation of people not accepting that.
I think that's what it is.
Could be.
Because people can be possessive, but I feel like being afraid to enter relationships because you're afraid that people will be possessive is doing yourself a disservice. I'm going to read some of the South Node attributes, the things that the South Node is trying to teach us. So the South Node in Scorpio wants us to release fear. It wants us to release our need for power, release our need to not dominate others, but to have power, to lord power over others by stepping into our own power. It wants us to release anger, and that's resentment as well, jealousy, defensiveness, and worry. And so that's why I asked you, I'm like, how many times has this happened to you?
I could see the worry come in.
If it's not happening to you over and over again, why are you shying away from it?
It might even just be because for myself, I don't necessarily crave, like some people I see like crave needing to be with somebody or be in a relationship.
Okay.
And because of that, it may lead into, well, if I don't crave this thing, I might not be willing to make concessions for this, where it's like...
You don't have to make concessions.
Some people expect some concessions.
Who are these people, Brian? Yes, people expect concessions, but that's where you go, these are my boundaries. No.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was saying.
Without saying no to the whole idea.
Oh, well, okay. Right.
Without saying, this is how everybody is, so I'm just going to be over here in my energy. It's like, no, some people who you encounter are going to be like that.
Absolutely.
And that's when you go, excuse me, I'm a Taurus rising, and I do what I want. But not shutting yourself off from the
possibility of something.
Right, because when you were talking about your friendships, it felt like there was so much more, not expectation, but just value. It felt like there was value in your friendships, but when you talked about thinking about they were always going to be here, and that's why you're upset.
I think I kind of what you're saying, because I think for me, and I've thought about this too, is that I value things that I've known since I was young, right? Like the people that I've known, so whether it's family or those friends that I met when I was in elementary school, middle school, even probably ish high school, depending on some people. And I still keep in contact with a lot of those people that I feel close to, where everything else sometimes kind of feels tangential, a little bit like, you pick them up here and there, and then it sometimes even like the prospect of a romantic relationship can feel like that, where
it doesn't have to always be like
right. But I guess just that's kind of, where a lot of that sort of just manifests of just kind of being like, if it doesn't happen, I don't know, it's just not something that I guess I care about as much, or if there's a better way to put it, I don't know.
You said something before about making concessions. Mm-hmm. And for me, what I heard is that when you're in relationships, you make concessions.
Yes. I guess when I said that, it's more like it gets to a point sometimes where, like, somebody will have to make a concession depending on the person in the relationship that they're trying to build. Right? So for me, I like with my friends and family, most of the time it's, I will make whatever concession. Listen, you want to do this thing? Let's go do it. Exactly.
But see, that's why I'm tying it in, is because I think your view of what your relationships are, not the other ones, but the friendships and stuff is, I make concessions for them a lot. I make concessions, but they're the people they're my core, they're my family, they're my friends, so I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. When in reality, you don't have to make all these concessions within any of your one-on-one relationships. And that was the Scorpio Pluto, where somebody in your one-on-one relationships aren't exactly balanced if you're the one making concessions all the time.
True.
And that's what your idea of one-on-one relationship is. And that's partially, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's partially why you're like, well, I haven't known you long enough to make all these concessions that I make for my friends, so fuck it.
Yeah. No. That's pretty much what I see. Because it's almost like if I saw myself asking somebody to make that sort of same concession for somebody they just met 2 months ago, I'd be like, go tell me to fuck off. Like, what? Like, that's exactly what I would think.
2 months? What was your longest relationship?
That most recent polyamorous relationship was probably about a year and a half.
Okay. What about before that?
Months, some months between, not super long. Mm-hmm.
Did you make a lot of concessions in those relationships?
No. Then like the earlier
ones? Did anybody pressure you to?
No, and I also think it's just kind of like it's just kind of one of the, like we talked about, where like fizzles out. Like it really starts out energetic in the beginning, excited to see this person, but then I don't think it gets far enough to the point where if we weren't seeing each other enough that it's like, hey, can you stop doing this thing so we could spend more time together? Like it never got to that point, like in timing wise.
Right.
So.
I don't think people would ask you to stop doing the things that you like.
Right. That's also true. It's just one of those, people have those fears of like, what if I do this? What is the person? Like that could absolutely be true. But the other thing about me is that that's okay. I'm fine being where I'm at. I enjoy it. It's not like, yeah, exactly. Like I don't have any sort of qualms of being like, oh my God, am I missing out on the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with?
The person.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have to be that. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm saying there's fruit that can grow from not shying away from experiences that haven't actually happened to you. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things where it's like a fear of like, well, once I get there, what do I do? And I feel like it's a similar thing in relationships, kind of, where like Exactly. Like if it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't go in that way, what do I do next? If it just builds up to being together longer with somebody, do I just let it ride? Do I go on? You know what I'm saying? If this kind of connects,
It definitely does. Fear of the unknown.
yeah, no, that's definitely a big thing that I had to get, because it also goes into with
With your
my
friends.
friends moving on. Like they're fully going. My one friend goes to Antarctica. What the fuck does he know about going into Antarctica? Like he knows about, like, you know, there's a basis, but like being there for
and going.
Yeah, being there for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months that he was there, or 3 months. I can't remember exactly how long, but for a good little chunk of time, being on this very desolate part of the world.
I don't know.
And
It's so cold.
yeah, but like, you know, for some people, they're just kind of like, all right, cool.
I'm gonna fucking do it.
For me, some of that, like, as I still, I've been in New Jersey for 31 years, but going out and, like, you know, part of me really wants to be able to move out and whatnot, and then some stuff keeps me here. Some of it might even be just the irrational fear of, like, what the hell's going to happen when I get out there?
Well, you know you have a 9th house north node, right?
Which,
9th house is wisdom, spirituality, traveling. Sagittarius is the centaur. It's about flying free.
mm-hmm.
And so that's where you're meant to go. The 3rd house in Cancer, 3rd house south node in Cancer, is very much so homing energy, especially with your moon being in the 4th house. That's the Cancer house. So your Leo moon is in the 4th house, and then your south node is in Cancer. So like you are very connected to your home environment, to what you've known in a past life. You probably grew up in the same space and never left that space. But what you're meant to go towards is adventure and philosophy and spiritual guidance and wisdom. And, you know, just like, I'm just reading your chart, you do what you want to do. But building that, especially in Capricorn. Within astrology, there are certain degree points that have importance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they have importance. So 0 degrees of any sign and 29 degrees of any sign is going to be very important. The 29th degree is called the anaretic degree. It is where there's an intense amount of pressure. So even right now, as we're talking, Saturn was just in Aquarius at the anaretic degree at 29 degrees before it transferred into Pisces. So there was like a buildup of pressure and then a release once it shifts to the next sign. And then you feel that pressure of, this is the next sign, this is the next energy once you get to 0 degrees. That happens with any sign. There's fixed signs, there's cardinal signs, and then there's mutable signs. And so all of the fixed signs, the special degree is 8 and 9, which is where your rising and your sun and your Chiron is, where you're fixed, which is why I'm bringing it up. And then 21 to 22. It's like 13 degrees and 26 degrees of the cardinal signs. And I'm not going to lie, like I have the other ones in the back of my head. I don't remember, but look them up. So yeah, I want to talk about your rising, your descendant, your Mars, and your Chiron all being at that extremely important degree of the fixed signs. Those planets are very, very significant in your life. There's something about that Chiron squaring both your ascendant and your Mars, your ascendant opposing your Mars being right on top of that descendant of other people. Chiron is the wounded healer. The story of Chiron in its short form is that Chiron, he spends his whole life training other gods to be warriors, being on the battlefield. But through that, he basically gets wounded, and the wound never heals. Like it's a bullet in his heart or a bullet underneath the skin that never goes away. And so Chiron in our chart is a wound that we will always experience, that we were born with. Working on that and working through it over time, it becomes less painful and also a way that we can turn around and help others through knowing and experiencing a deep wound, a deep pain, we see it in others and are able to acknowledge and correct it, or at least soothe it in others. There's something to be said about the Chiron squaring. We were talking about the way that you assert yourself. We were also talking about the way that your relationships go, and then also talking about the fear of people expecting too much from you within relationships. There's something to be said about that Chiron in Leo in your fourth house, in the house of the things that you've always known. You have such weight within your friendships and the one-on-one relationships that you had from your childhood. And so my question from there is, how often do you make new friends? How often do those new friends stick around in your life? We'll start with those two.
Okay. How often do I make new friends? I guess it depends on the level of friendship, because I now, with like the age of social media and, you know, the internet.
Friends that you would call friends, the ones that you place value in those relationships. Are there any new ones? And new means like the past 3-4 years.
Trying to think.
Also, Brian, if you think that we're not going to be friends, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself, Brian.
Well, then there we go. There's one.
I'm not the answer, though. No. Think about it. I really want you to marinate on it, because I have a follow-up question. The other follow-up question is, if the answer is no, or there's not a lot, how do you intend to move forward with connections? Because and this isn't to say that your friends aren't always going to be there, but it's kind of interesting that your friends are growing up, and as they grow up and get older, they're building their worlds around them, and it's a new world. And I just wonder if you're doing the same thing.
Okay. So I guess in terms of like friends that I care about, I do, but I've also let go of friends in that same amount of time. It's a strange thing, because I feel like I connect with people, and as I was saying, kind of like with the internet and whatnot, they're not always in the same area, that I meet these people and then we just kind of connect. And then every so often we catch up, we talk. But in terms of like friends that, you know, they'd like invite me to some special occasion every so often and be like, hey, let's go do this thing and, you know, make this a regular occurrence. Maybe not so much. But if they're in my immediate orbit and I start seeing them more often, that's kind of how that would build. Because, I mean, in a sense, you're also right, where those connections, I'm either not letting them grow because I'm not putting enough effort into them myself, or maybe it's just not in the place to grow. Where, like, if they are far away, and the only time I do see them is at like some event that I go to every so often. Like, I've met a lot of friends through this improv retreat I used to go to. So I used to be a part of the Magnet Theater in New York.
Okay.
And so they're an improv theater, and it's great. And so every summer they would have this thing called Camp Magnet. And so we'd go to upstate New York, near like the Catskills, and there used to be this camp, or is still this camp. I think they're doing it again this semester. They took a year off, but year. And so there, I was going there for like 4 or 5 years consistently, because it's just a nice place to be. You kind of go up there, everybody's there to hang out, but you go in groups and take like improv classes with everybody while the instructors and teachers are there. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of free time where like you go swim, they have a lake there. People bring board games and stuff.
For adults?
Yeah, pretty much. It's so fun. It's 4 days, 3 nights, from Thursday to a Sunday, and it's just, you meet a bunch of great people, and every evening you get together, you basically put on a big improv show with everybody, and then afterwards it's hangout time. You go have a bonfire, have some drinks, you know, play more games, do whatever.
Okay.
I've definitely met so many people some people that I don't talk to outside of that, but when I go, I see them and it's like, I'm so glad
You're
you
back
come back
there.
here every year.
Okay.
Yeah, and like we talk about how our years went
Okay.
and what's been going on and what it looks like and like relationships and stuff.
Okay.
And you also just meet a bunch of new people every year that come just once, and you meet them and you're like, oh wow, this is an interesting person. Love talking to them. Maybe I'll never see them in my life again, but I'm glad I talked to them while they were there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of like a friendship like that, that's great. But yeah, I don't know. I think, sorry, you can go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, seeing friends build their lives and kind of being in the same spot. I do have those thoughts a lot where I do feel like I'm in the same spot and I'm not maybe growing as much, but I also feel like I still am. I think a lot of that too is that I've been in the same place, same house my entire existence pretty much, which is like a good and bad thing. For me now, I've grown indifferent towards that. I used to have a lot of resentment for it. I think for myself, I have grown up socially and like kind of mentally behind everybody in like of my friends and people that I'm close to. I've seen them go through it, and then I'm like, well, why haven't I done this thing yet, or why am I not trying to go through this thing? But then sometimes like some things I don't have that drive to do, and then I'm kind of like, well, if I don't have the drive to do it, then I'm not gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tauruses move slower just in general. Like that's just a thing. Like Taurus energy moves slow. It's slow determination, which is a great thing. It just means that things will probably prosper for us a little later. And I'm saying this as like your Taurus rising is the way that you see the world and the way that the world sees you. So like your rising sign means so much. I know that you're a Scorpio, but your rising sign means so much. That Scorpio energy though will compare itself to others as well. And it being in the 6th house. So the 6th house, your sun in the 6th house is also probably why you're harsher, like you critique yourself a lot. It's the house of Virgo, and your Venus is also in Virgo. And Virgo is the perfectionist. Virgo is the details, all of the little teeny tiny details. Virgo is the planner. Virgo is the one who's making sure that everybody's okay, everything's okay, everything is right and in its place. And so with your sun being in Scorpio, in Virgo, it would lead to looking around, seeing everybody else, and then being like, well, I need to be doing this, or I need to be like this, or what's going on. It's like a critical eye. It's a critical eye that also it compares itself because it's in Scorpio.
I feel like I'm almost like a step behind everybody else, not in a literal sense of like, you know, whether it's like buying a house, having a family, just in terms of like, I guess, growing. I just feel like most people, or I see people go through something and I kind of observe it and understand it through them than I have more so than myself going through certain things.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess that's how I would put that. And there's a clear distinction between reading a book about an experience and then going through that same experience, kind of like whatever it may be. Whether it's
I fully understand.
Good, bad experience. That's kind of how I feel. My growing up and like life has kind of been almost experiencing it through other people versus myself a lot of the time.
Ooh, that nugget was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to bring me back to your 7th house. But the moon being in your 4th house would lead you to stay where you're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of your fixed energy, like I said, your only mutable energy is in Virgo. So it's your Venus and it's your Jupiter. All the other planets are fixed, which is, it's not, people will say that's a bad thing because they don't like stubborn energy. I don't mind stubborn energy because I have a lot of it. It just leads you to move slower. It leads you to stay where you're comfortable until you're not comfortable anymore and something has to change. Now, that is the one thing that I will say, that with people with fixed energy, it's like my mom says, you've got a hard head. Like, you will have to bump into things to get set on the right path because it's only through that excruciating experience or the pain or there's only through something going so wrong that you're like, I can't take this anymore. It needs to fucking change, where the change happens. But if you lean into that Virgo side of you, leaning into the Venus and the Jupiter side, which is enthusiastic and it's playful, it's a little diligent about it, but that's okay because we love that. Leaning into that will help to open up the areas of your life that feel stuck. You observe a lot. You have a lot of Scorpio energy as well. A lot of Scorpios, in my opinion, they play like they're very, very brave. And a lot of the times they'll sit back and watch everybody else and then maneuver. And it's not like they're not brave. It's like a calculated type of brave. Like the Leo energy is charge, you know what I mean? And the Scorpio energy is like, I'm going to watch what's going on. I'm going to see what works for some people, what didn't work for some people. I might step a toe out, but if I get burned, I'm coming back in. Is it safe? Scorpio energy is motivated a lot by fear, which is something that I'm dealing with as well. Got a Scorpio moon. And I realize that fear it just cycles back